Television is not the truth. Television is a goddamn amusement park.
It's up to you.
The existence of this newspaper is connected to those protests that happened in Seattle in 1999 that took the corporate media entirely by surprise. The only thing they wanted to focus on was people throwing rocks and broken windows. And so the people in the streets covered the protests themselves, and they didn't wait for the corporate media to cover them. And it was the birth of the indie media revolution. And this newspaper that we're here supporting came out of that moment. And I really do think that it is worth thinking about what we were talking about before we were so rudely interrupted. And what we were talking about was global empire, not just American empire, but global empire. And we were talking about corporate power and the corporate dominance of the political process. We were absolutely equal opportunity protesters, and that was very clear during the 2000 conventions, because you had fierce protests against the Republican National Convention and against the Democratic National Convention in Los Angeles. And we were focusing on the corporations that were funding both parties. We were trying to out this structure that had bought out the entire political process. And sure, some people were voting for Democrats and some people were voting for Ralph Nader, but that wasn't the point. We were not obsessed with elections. We were building our movement. We were building coalitions that was identifying a global system of power that was systematically disenfranchising people around the world. We were protesting the corporate liberation movement, the most powerful liberation movement of our time, unfortunately, which is the movement of capital to liberate itself from all constraints on its ability to accumulate grotesque profits. You know what, there's something fitting about the fact that there's a spa in the middle of the convention, because in a way, the entire convention is a sort of a spa. It's one big massage for America's ailing empire. And there was just this incredible lapse. You had 15,000 journalists in Denver, and who was asking the really tough questions of all of these readily available and readily accessible politicians. It was seen as impolite because everyone was getting facials together. It was all one big happy family. And Jeremy, of course, was pigeonholing congresspeople and senators and asking them about war crimes in Afghanistan, asking them about Obama's Blackwater policy and the fact that he isn't calling for withdrawal of Blackwater from Iraq, and the questions that really needed to be asked. There was a particular moment where there was, and I think many of you watched Democracy Now! During the conventions, and there was that party where AT&T put on a party for the Blue Dogs. And this was incredibly significant because, of course, the Democrats had just caved on FISA, and Barack Obama had caved on FISA. And the substance of the FISA bill is giving, in addition to allowing continued warrantless wiretapping, it's giving retroactive immunity to all the big telecoms, including AT&T, which was one of the official sponsors of the convention. So what was so striking was that you had this AT&T-sponsored party basically thanking the Democrats who had just granted them legal immunity. And who was there? Amy Goodman and the Democracy Now! Crew. Glenn Greenwald was there, Jane Hampshire, and that was it. What we need to be doing is thinking about how we put our issues on the agenda. And this is a moment where we can have the energy that we had in 2001, only much more so, because these issues are so much more populist than they were then, because the track record of the failure of corporate globalization is obvious for all to see. I mean, Hillary Clinton campaigned on it, for God's sake. Lou Dobbs talks about it every night, except for then he says, blame immigrants, right? We are not rising to this political moment to say, don't use this anger to attack the people who are most vulnerable in our society. This anger has to go up to the very top, right? So this happens to movements. You know, sometimes, if we're not careful, we can miss our moment, right? Where when the moment comes, when the people are really with us, when they're really ready for a radical message, we're so burnt out, we're so divided, that we actually can't rise to it. You know, this is the real energy crisis, our energy crisis, okay? So we need to get our energy back, whatever it takes. Spas, facials, massages. We need to recharge and charge.
Television is not the truth. Television is a goddamn amusement park.